Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we're going to talk about, is red too good in the One Piece card game? Yes. But seriously, I do want to just kind of have a discussion going over my thoughts going on into it. I usually don't do a lot of these videos going over what I think needs to be changed or if something needs to be changed. Generically, I usually like stuff to just kind of play out, and maybe pessimistically, I know that it's kind of rare for Bandai to change something in the English meta, at least before the Japanese meta. But I a lot of people have been talking about this, and it's just something I wanted to do. So we're going to do that for this video today. But very opinionated and very discussion heavy too. So these are, again, my opinions, and I hope you guys are able to kind of form your own decisions and own opinions and kind of go from there. So going into kind of what this video is about and what this video is not about, it's my opinions. So this is not obviously like the right opinions. I don't want to be as bold to say anything like that. I don't think this is to say like Bandai needs to change something or fix something or anything on those lines. I do want to just kind of talk about what I think is overtuned and what some potential fixes could be, and less of me like hard on complaining. And in my mind too, like the difference between like having like reflections and complaining is that complaining is you don't kind of offer any opinions or ways to correct what you don't like. And so that's just kind of how it is. Some people just say, oh, this needs to be fixed, and just like, oh, get rid of it, get banned. And like, I think banning cards and people just not liking a card and calling it to be banned is not necessarily the best thing in a lot of ways. Additionally, I also want to say, like, just because something gets banned means that, like there's a lot of customer satisfaction in this kind of too, which is a little bit different than like a best way to balance something as well. So anyways, we're going to just jump on into it. We're going to start off with just kind of what started my kind of thoughts onto this is just these are the first three events we've had in the outside of Asia events that we've had. So we have the Play TCG webcam regionals, as well as the two raid and trade ones over in Europe. We're going to have more events we have upcoming this weekend: PPG's 1,000 person webcam event, as well as core TCG's the weekend afterwards. So we'll have more data. This video is going to probably be outdated pretty soon, but I think the thing you notice the most is that Zoro and Newgate and Trafalgar Law are very present in these. And all three of these events, they take up at least 75% of the top 16, which, isn't something to say necessarily compared to like the full leader breakdown, which unfortunately I don't have for these events. But if you look at these pie charts, you just definitely see these characters staring back at you with his a little something. Especially like the Play TCG event is pretty bad. Like there's no laws that made top cut, which is a little weird, but between Zoro and Newgate, we have 75% right off those two leaders, which is kind of rough in a lot of ways. So kind of that sparked my want to make this video, and then seeing these other two events, we're like, okay, cool, we're talking about it. But there's kind of there, and we're just going to talk about each leader of those three generically, my thoughts about it, and maybe some potential fixes. So we have Zoro, and I will be the first to admit, I don't think Zoro was the best leader in OP01, but with all the kind of more generic cards we got in red, including like the one drop army deck, which didn't really have a leader for it, which is really interesting to have kind of such an archetype based thing that didn't have a leader inherently to go into. It just kind of went to Zoro because he's like the generic one that's really good at buffing a wide board. So he got like that, and he doesn't seem to be waning. And this is going to be for all three of these leaders, and I didn't mention this a second ago, but all three of these leaders are still topping and winning and doing very well, and most of them are looking still like OPO3 or OPO2 decks that are topping in OPO4 in Japan. So obviously that meta is very new as well, but those are also just kind of something that I noticed for all of these, and kind of why I'm mentioning it. So but I think just the idea that this can buff so many things good, and in general, if they don't do anything with this leader, I fear that it's going to be very, very difficult for them to make a leader that's better than Zoro, or find a leader that people would want to play outside of Zoro, unless they just made a lot of cards that were specifically only for buffing the your leader restricted cards a lot of the time. So just the fact that this extra 1k is very, very good, and as long as your board has more than two characters on it, it's like better than Luffy, which is supposed to be kind of a generic leader in its own right as well. But I think again, like they will just find a lot of issues in the future sets saying, look, we have this new red package is really cool, and you as a player have to decide, okay, Do I use the leader that's made for, or do I just go back to Zoro, because Zoro is just very strong and can have some good, things for it. So I don't think there's like a lot of decision making for that. I will say, admittedly, there is a lot of different kind of ways to build it. I know there's like the tried and true package a lot of the time, but Zoro can do a lot of different things just with kind of how flexible red is as a color too. So there it is. So some potential fixes for it. I think the best way moving forward is to restrict what he buffs. I think just saying everything gets plus 1k is a really, really generic, and you don't really have to do any like deck building challenges or any like cost benefit analysis for it. So I was thinking straw hats are only. I had a stream earlier that people said, add the slash technique. So cool. All right. Characters a slash, cool to get in because he's a sword man, right? He gets to do those kind of things. So I get it. So that kind of makes it a little bit different. Some cards still get added to the mix for it, but it doesn't mean you just generically get all these plus 1k buffs for free, which is, I think, in its own right. So maybe that's a good fix for it. It does mean like Marco swings aren't 7Ks for free now, which is kind of nice. And you will have to kind of either make some deck building choices and some cost benefits for running a card that isn't a straw hat or not a slash. Like you're going to have to say, oh, well, I want to run this card, but maybe I'm not any sure because I don't get the leader buff for it. So that's kind of my idea with it. I think Zoro is fine, but in general, just too generic. And if they want to not run into an issue where red continues just being very good, then that's kind of the idea for it. So there we go there. And we have Newgate, which is just this, I don't know. I'll start with this section outright. If he gets banned, so be it, right? That's fine. I understand why, but I also understand like why this character is built in a lot of ways. And I know a lot of it is lore, but I do think he's very troublesome for a lot of people, right? He is different in the fact that you do have to play against him differently because he is a 6k leader, and he does take damage every turn, which is bad, right? But at the same time, being able to get that huge card advantage early game and being able to get out of it, I think is very, very strong. So, and then obviously set 2, he's pretty good. He did get his Moby Dick banned already, so that's something impactful. I know that if we were in set 3 without it banned, we'd still be in a rough spot. But again, he's still doing really, really good in set 4 and getting a lot of top. So that's already kind of a little bit suspicious to me. And since he got just a bunch of support in set 3, like an amount of support that so many other decks would have loved to see, but he got so much other stuff with it, and because of that, he was able to run a lot of his actual kind of ideas of his actual archetype. So I don't really have a good fix for him, to be honest. If he gets banned, so be it. It's a little bit of a shame because he is really cool, and like I get from like a lore sense and like just a uniqueness, it's really nice to see this leader, and I do like the idea of them having some wacky numbers for these, and we're going to see more of these moving forward too. But in general, he's just okay to get banned. Otherwise, like an fix that's been talking I've been thinking in my head, at least if you want to get rid of this leader specifically, is that if he was instead of 5 life leader, but his life effect didn't, his end of turn effect only activated if you had 3 or less Dawn, right? So that just means that you have 1 less card draw. I know that's like a really minor change, but it's something that could potentially make him a little bit better. It means that like early game you have like 1 less card, which means that you have like less, you have more variance, and you have less of all the cards you need. So that's kind of something I was thinking about. It's kind of lame. So if it's not the case, then that's what it is. But I think being able to have like 1 less card drawn could be impactful enough. But maybe I'm wrong on that one. So there we go on Newgate. I really don't know if he gets banned. That's sad, but I get it. So there we go. Trafalgar Law. This one's maybe a little bit more, I would say, personal choice for this one. I know a lot of people like it, and maybe I'm just like tired. Maybe I'm just tired of literally for like a year plus seeing people say, okay, well, I'm going to use my leader effect to bounce back to play Trafalgar Law, to play something else. In general, he just generates way more value than like any other leader in the game. He's very, very strong. And the fact that even right now in OPO3, he's still just running a set 2 deck. Set 4, he's still running set 2 deck. And it's just very good. There's just so many good searchers that Red has that we're going to talk about maybe 1 or 2 later. but he just has such a good consistent package as it is that it's very, very hard to overcome it unless you super duper tech against it, right? So I think in general he's just like a leader that you can really be very strong with, but at the same time, like I'm a little bit tired for it. So I don't know if that's like a good enough reason for it, but just the fact that he's kind of in a spot where he's still fantastic and gets a lot of abilities and a lot of effects from it. I don't know if that means anything. So, and my other kind of thing with him is that I think if Zoro and Newgate, if both of them get hit, I think that his worst matchup, at least here in OPO3, is probably those two decks. So, and Ace with Fire Fist, right? But just the fact that if red inherently gets hit, I think he gets better still because he can rely on the less common red cards and he can really take off. So I don't know how I feel about this deck. I don't want in general, and I haven't really said this. The sweet spot is always to make a fix to make a deck less viable, but not less viable enough that it doesn't see any play, right? You still want to be able to let people who like playing the deck and the leader to still be able to play the cards they like and they've invested time and money into, but it's hard to find that sweet spot a lot of the time. So, but I think with this guy, I don't know. I'm personally just bored of saying like, oh boy, he bounces his 5 costs. And really the biggest thing that I always find with this deck is it's very hard to interact with it, ironically, because there are just so many times where they just end their turn. They have 5 cards on their board and they're all in active mode. And I just can't do anything about it, especially if I'm playing, like he just has like some really polarizing matchups that are in his favor a lot of the time because of that. So in general, some lame fixes for him is that you can increase the cost, meaning that the activate main costs like 3 instead of 2, which I don't think is honestly that terrible. It just means like it's a little bit less efficient for them. It's a little bit harder for them to do it on turn 3, which some can really set up really quickly, and it just means like it does kind of add up throughout the game. They get so much free play for so many stuff that extra Dawn can be very helpful. The other idea is that the character that you play off shambles or your lead activate main is played in rest, so that's maybe a little bit extreme. You guys can have your opinions on that, but just to kind of fix like the idea that you can't just end your turn with all your characters active. I want to be able to swing into something. You do have to make some decisions on there and get some ideas. So maybe that's like the more extreme cost for it, but I think it's something that could be done to maybe rein in just kind of the uninteractability you sometimes face when you play against Trafalgar Law. So I don't know. We're going to go from there. All right, and then going into kind of individual cards, Radical Beam, I think, is one of the strongest cards in the game. It is always a 4K counter, and I don't mean always, but it's essentially always, right? Whenever you would need a 4K counter is usually later in the game when you're already at 2 life or less, and it's just never dead, right? It's also, we have searches for red event cards for some reason. So you can find this very easy off Buggy. It's also a Straw Hat Crew. So if you're playing Nami, you can find it too. It's just great. Like this is a great card that's not hard to find and it does a lot for you. So I don't think anyone's denying that. I would be super okay with this as a card that was just a one of, to be honest. It's very it's strong enough to be a one of card, and usually when I think of cards that are one ofs, I think that are cards that have like strong effects but also aren't like sacky one ofs at the same time. And maybe this would be a sacky one of, but you can restrict this to 1. You still have guard point, which is just like the lesser version of this card, but still identical in a lot of ways. So I think that's very strong. Or if there's some like magic way to errata it to like you only get the 4K at 0 life, it's still some decks still wouldn't be affected by it, like Newgate, but it'd still be very, very good, and you can use it there. So I don't know. I would honestly, if I was to make my decision and choose, I would limit this to 1 or ban it, but I think limit to 1 would be something to suit what this card does and how effective it is, and make it so your opponent always has to be worried and do I play around this Radical Beam that they could have in hand? They only have 1, but it could be the one that gets them out of it. Like it's I think it's a solid card to put at 1. If we're going to put cards to 1, this is probably the first one I would do it for. So there we go there. The Marcos, these are good cards. These are very, very solid cards. And I haven't talked about this as much, but part of the reason I think red is very good is the fact that it gets to it gets some free value where a lot of other colors don't. And I compare it to black a lot of the time because black has just like searchers, but they're just worse. Or like they also kind of work on a lot of like hard removal skills, but black kind of has to either like discard more cards or work harder for it. And meanwhile, like this 5-cost Marco can just pop something that was essentially played early in the turn, early in the game for free. Like it's a free removal. Like it's usually something tiny, but then if you want to boost it up to something bigger, it can expand and kind of tailor higher too. So it's kind of a weird spot, like how good red gets for this. On top of both these effects being able to be, I get it. I get there's lore. I get the lore for cards. And I really honestly do love that Bandai's really great at putting lore onto their cards and characters and everything else like that. However, I think the revival effect that they have right now is a little bit too good. I'll also say like counter lore that Marco, like we don't really know 100%. And this, I did some research on like the limits to like Marco's like regeneration. And the idea is like, he has some, but it's like limited somehow. Like he has to, like, it's not like instantaneous, like infinite kind of heal. So in that vein, if it's like a once per turn, that would be there. It's tough to do a once per turn on a card that on like a ruling sense, because he leaves the battle area, he goes to the trash, and then he comes back, which means that he's technically a new instance of that card in game mechanic rules. So it would have to be you'd have to like change it to all turns. If this card would be KO'd, you can not have it KO'd, but then also that means it's worse against like Rob. There's just like a bunch of things. Like it'd be kind of like messier if you want it to be like not KO'd, but only be like once per turn kind of thing. So I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to do that at all. It could be like restricted to Whitebeard Pirates, which I think makes a little bit of sense for this, especially since he's the, his first mate kind of thing. So restricted to that. But I don't know. I think he's good. I think he's maybe like overtuned, but not like outrageously so. But I know a lot of people are kind of tired to just say, I would have won, but they had a Marco on their board and then I couldn't like. There it is. So I like the blocker can be removed a little bit easier now, so it's not as big of a bane, but it's still a little stinky. So there we go. In general, I don't think anything's going to happen to these two, but I know a lot of people hate these cards, and I just want to mention it. And then last card we're going to talk about is Curly the Dan, and this card's sneaking up on me as like one of the best cards in the game, and it's really obnoxious how good it really is. So obviously more for Zoro and for Law, but just to have a 2-drop that finds a 1-drop, and it's just so generic. This card is stupidly generic for what it is. There are so many searchers that are 1-drops that this can find. So a searcher that can find a searcher is great, especially when they put so much effort in this game to restrict other archetypes and other colors and everything else to not be able to find themselves, which technically Curly Dadan can't find itself. However, this is the only searcher that can find other searchers, except for like Bonnie and Momo, I guess, which can find themselves, but they have like the additional cost, right? Curly the Dan being able to find this, but also there's just so many 2Ks you can find. There's just so many good option selects that you get in the 1-cost slot for red that Curly the Dan is such a good card in the game. So I don't know. I do think that this is unironically ban worthy of a card, or limit to 1 if we're still going for that, but it's just like very obnoxious. Like I don't know how many times where I've played against Zoro, their turn 2 is I'm going to play Curly the Dan, I find Izo, I play Izo, it's going to find Marco, and I'm like, cool. So they went -0 in hand. They cycled more. They have 2 bodies on the board, which they can bust off with their Zoro. And now I know there's a 5-cost Marco next turn to pop my 3K that's on board already. So like, it just stinks. All of it just really, really stinks. Like this just feels bad. I feel like I've already lost on turn 2 if I see that. So I don't know. I think Curly the Dan, I don't think there's a good way to restrict what it searches outright. So it's just, I don't know, it just gets too much value, especially compared to so many other colors where they don't get any effects like this. Like if every color had this, sure, why not? If you can find 1-drops for other colors, like yellow could see that for real. There's so many good 1-drops for yellow, but they're like, nah. Even black has a couple of good 1-drops that you could use for this. So I don't know. It's just very, very strong. And if it's just unilaterally to red, I feel like it's just such an advantage that so many other colors would want as well. So Anyways, those are like the big cards I want to talk about. I know you guys probably have some other opinions or anything else that you guys can do in the comments there. But I also do want to say that I've been talking about card games for a long time. You can go back to my channel and check. It's been almost, actually, I think it's been 6 years. Has it been 6 years? It's been a long time, at least 5 years. Maybe it's, man, I've been talking about card games for a really long time, haven't I? That's crazy. But I also just want to mention that I'm not naive enough to say, oh, I can fix the meta by banning one card, right? There's sometimes when you try to fix the meta by getting rid of the problem card, a bigger problem comes out because of it too. So this is something I just want to mention, that you do have to be careful of what you wish for, and which is a shame at times, but you got to know what will get into the space that is, developed because red gets out of the space as well. So again, this is kind of why I mentioned that this is not something that I think is a high need for restrictions. Again, I would say I'm mildly pessimistic that Bandai is going to change anything in the OPO3 meta, but we'll see if that's the case. But you do have to be careful again. Like if the big bad boy goes away, who's the new bully, right? Who's the new bully when the old bully goes away? And you're going to like that bully more or less, and you got to be careful. So I don't know. We'll see what it's like. But in general, love this card game. Appreciate just how much fun it's been and all the stuff we've been able to do with it. And I appreciate you guys for watching this. Again, I usually don't make these videos, as you guys can tell. If you want more of these, let me know potentially. I don't think I'll make another one anytime soon, but let me know your thoughts. Obviously, the comment section's open, and I want to see where your guys' head at. But I don't think it's a huge issue, but it is sad. Just I type in a lot of deck lists, and for all of them to be Zoro is pretty sad at sometimes. So anyways, that's going to be it for me. I really do appreciate you guys checking out this video, hearing my thoughts out, and make sure to hit that like and subscribe for future stuff, including future One Piece OPO3 content and beyond. And that's going to be it for me. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.